Hi, Sean Still here, and we're going to continue our conversation about sprint reports and how they can be used for sprint retrospectives. Um, so we're going to navigate to our test project, and once we are in our test project, we're going to go to reports, and we're going to go to the sprint report. Now, I've done a whole bunch of sprints with various scenarios, but one of the scenarios that I want to talk about that I do see quite common in the industry is this scenario that I've laid out. Okay, so starting off looking at our burn down chart, you can see that the team had a long stretch where there was very little progress that was made. And then some progress was made as seen in this downturn. But as soon as they get to this point, they suddenly pull in a bunch of additional work, even though they are nowhere near a point where we should be considering that. To pull in work, you would probably need to be well under this gray line. But you can see that they're not even close, yet they still pull in some additional work. They complete some of the work, and then they end up having to punt a bunch of stories at the end of their sprint because they're not completed. So looking at it, remember, if it has an asterisk, that means that the story was added after the start of the sprint. All right, so it was a scope increase. Very important to remember as we're talking through these things. Okay, so we look at the completed issues and we can see that yes, there was one issue that was brought in after the sprint started. Um, after the sprint started and completed. All right, but then we come down here. All right, and these were the stories that didn't finish, and we have 4 stories that were pulled in after the sprint started that were not completed. That's not good. But what's even worse is this story right here. Notice this story doesn't have an asterisk. So that means that the story was part of the original sprint commitment. All right. And this story right here, which was pulled in after the sprint started, was completed ahead of this one. That was part of the original commitment. So if I am a product owner, if I am a Scrum Master, there's a lot of questions that I would want to ask about that. Why did we prioritize a story that was pulled in after the sprint started over a story that we had committed to at the beginning of the sprint? Why were so many stories pulled in even though the team had not made significant progress in its sprint? There's a lot of questions that this stirs up, all right, and this should be a part of the sprint retrospective, all right, as to why did these things happen. Hopefully, if you've got a really good, strong Scrum Master, they are working with the team to prevent these items from happening in the first place. All right, but sometimes the Scrum Master can get caught up in a team that is over optimistic. When that happens, I highly encourage the Scrum Master to stay strong and prevent these types of scenarios from happening. But they do happen. They unfortunately happen a little bit too frequently, but they do happen. So here's some information. Here's how you can use JIRA's sprint report to understand what happened during the sprint so that then you can go back and start to have those conversations. Because remember, metrics are never good nor bad. There are always points for conversation. Maybe that there was a legitimate reason why this happened. All right. If it is, we want to understand what that reasoning was. If there wasn't a legitimate reason, well, how did we get ourselves into that, and how do we prevent it in the future? All right, those are the types of questions that can be brought up in a retrospective. All right, so JIRA, especially the sprint report, can be a very powerful tool during a team's sprint report. I highly encourage you, no matter what your role is, whether you're a team member, scrum master, product owner, even stakeholder, I highly encourage you to utilize this sprint report and begin to ask the appropriate questions. All right. Thank you very much. Look forward to talking to you again. Bye.